What you are about to hear is the story of the cursed doll, Annabelle. All content is credited to TonySparrow.com, aka NESPR, New England Society for Psychic Research.com, the original website for Ed and Lorraine Warren. Thank you for this information, and without further ado, let's begin. The origin. In 1970, a mother purchased an antique Raggedy Ann doll from a hobby store. The doll had been a birthday present for her daughter, Donna. Donna was preparing to graduate from college with a nursing degree. She lived in a tiny apartment with her roommate, Angie, a nurse as pleased with the cute Raggedy Ann doll as Donna was. They placed it on her bed as a decoration and didn't give it a second thought. Within days, both Donna and Angie noticed that there appeared to be something very strange and creepy about the doll. The doll mysteriously moved about the house, relatively small movements at first, such as a change in position, but as time passed, the movements became more noticeable. Donna and Angie would come home to find the doll in completely different rooms. Sometimes the doll would be found with legs crossed, arms folded, and other times it would be found upright, standing on its own 2 feet. Several times Donna left the doll on the couch before leaving for work and would return to find the doll in her room on the bed with the door closed. The messages. Annabelle the doll not only moved but could write as well. About a month into their experiences, Donna and Angie began to find messages on parchment paper that read, "Help us" and "Help Lou." The handwritings as if written by a small child. The creepy part about these messages was not the wording but the way that they were written. At the time, Donna had never kept parchment paper on which the notes were written in the house. So where did it come from? Annabelle Higgins. One night, Donna came home to find the doll had moved again. This time it was on her bed. Donna had come to find that this was typical of the doll, but somehow she knew this time it was different. Something was not right. A sense of fear came over her when she inspected the doll and saw what looked like blood drops on the back of its hand and its chest. Seemingly from nowhere, a liquidy red substance had appeared on the doll. Scared and desperate, Donna and Angie decided it was time to seek expert advice. Not knowing where to turn, they contacted a medium and a seance was held. Donna was then introduced to the spirit of Annabelle Higgins. The medium related the story of Annabelle to both Donna and Angie. Annabelle was a young girl that resided on the property before the apartments were built. They were happy times. She was a young girl of only 7 years old when her lifeless body was found in the field upon which the apartment complex now stands. The spirit related to the medium that she felt comfort with Donna and Angie and wanted to stay with them and be loved. Feeling compassion for Annabelle and her story, Donna gave her permission to inhabit the doll and stay with them. They were too soon to find out, however, that Annabelle was not what she appeared to be, and this was no ordinary case and definitely no ordinary doll. Account. Lou was friends with Donna and Angie and had been with them since the day the doll arrived. Lou had never been fond of the doll and on several occasions warned Donna that it was evil and to get rid of it. Donna had a compassionate tie to the doll and not giving much credence to Lou's feelings, well, she kept it. Donna's decision, it turns out, was a terrible, terrible mistake. Lou awoke one night from a deep sleep and in panic. Once again, he had a reoccurring bad dream. Only this time, somehow, something seemed different. It was as though he was awake but could not move. He looked around the room but couldn't discern anything out of the ordinary, and then it happened. Looking down toward his feet, he saw the doll Annabelle. It began to slowly glide up his leg, moved over his chest, and then stopped. Within seconds, the doll was strangling him. Paralyzed and gasping for breath, Lou, at the point of asphyxiation, blacked out. He awoke the next morning, certain it was not a dream. Lou was determined to rid himself of that doll and the spirit that possessed it. Lou, however, would have one more terrifying experience with Annabelle. While preparing for a road trip the next day, Lou and Angie were reading over maps alone in her apartment. The apartment seemed eerily quiet, and suddenly rustling sounds coming from Donna's room aroused fear that someone had possibly broken into the apartment. Lou, determined to figure out what or who it was, quietly made his way to the bedroom door. He awaited for the noises to stop before entering and turning on the light. The room was empty except for Annabelle, whom was tossed on the floor in the corner. Lou scoured the room for forced entry, but nothing was out of place except for Annabelle. But as he got close to the doll, he got the distinct impression that somebody was behind him. Spinning around, he was quick to realize nobody else was there. Then in a flash, he found himself grabbing for his chest, doubled over, cut and bleeding. His shirt was stained with blood, and upon opening his shirt, there on his chest was what looked to be 7 distinct claw marks, 3 vertically and 4 horizontally. All were hot like burns. These scratches healed almost immediately, however, half gone the next day and fully gone by day 2. The Warrens investigate. The case is continued. Donna finally was willing to believe the spirit in the house was not that of a young girl, but inhuman and demonic in nature. After Lou's experiences, Donna felt it was time to seek real expert advice and contacted an Episcopal priest named Father Hegan. Father Hegan felt it was a spiritual matter and he felt he needed to contact the higher authority in the church. So he contacted Father Cook, who immediately contacted the Warrens. Ed and Lorraine Warren immediately took interest in the case and contacted Donna concerning the doll. The Warrens, after speaking with Donna, Angie, and Lou, came to the immediate conclusion the doll itself was not in fact possessed, but manipulated by an inhuman presence. Spirits do not possess inanimate objects like houses or toys. They possess people. Plain and simple. An inhuman spirit can attach itself to a place or object, and this is what occurred in the Annabelle case. The spirit manipulated the doll. It was looking to possess a human host. The spirit, or in this case an inhuman demonic spirit, was essentially in the infestation stage of the phenomena. It first began moving the doll around the apartment by means of teleportation around the apartment to arouse the occupants' curiosity in hopes that they would give it recognition. Then, predictably, the mistake of bringing a medium into the apartment to communicate with it. The inhuman spirit, now able to communicate through the medium, preyed on the girl's emotional vulnerabilities by pretending to be a rather harmless, lost young girl, with which during the seance was allowed permission by Donna to haunt the apartment. Insofar as demonic is a negative spirit, it then set about causing patently negative phenomena to occur. It aroused fear through the weird movements of the doll. It brought about the materialization of disturbing handwritten notes, the symbolic drops of blood on the doll, and it ultimately even attacked Lou, leaving behind the symbolic mark of the beast. The next stage of the infestation phenomena would have been complete human possession. Had these experiences lasted another 2 or 3 weeks, the spirit would have completely possessed and if not harmed or even killed one or all of the occupants in the house. At the conclusion of the investigation, the Warrens felt it appropriate to have the recitation of an exorcism blessing by Father Cook to cleanse the apartment. The Episcopal blessing of the home is a wordy 7-page document that is distinctly positive in nature. Rather than specifically expelling evil entities from the dwelling, the emphasis is instead directed toward filling the home with the power and the positivity of God, says Ed Warren. At Donna's request, and as a further precaution against the phenomena ever occurring in the home again, the Warrens took the big Raggedy Annabelle along with them when they left. After all is said and done, we will now bring you to the conclusion. Father Cook, although uncomfortable with his role as an exorcist, agreed to perform the 7-page rite of exorcism, a doctrine he recited throughout the apartment, at which point the Warrens were confident the entity would no longer reside there. They agreed to take the Raggedy Annabelle back home with them. Upon leaving, Ed placed the doll in the back seat and agreed he would not take the interstate in the event the inhuman spirit still resided with the doll. His suspicions were all too correct. In no time, the Warrens felt themselves as the object of a vicious hatred. Then at each dangerous curve, the car swerved and stalled with every corner, causing the power steering and brakes to fail. Repeatedly, the car verged on collision. Ed reached into the back seat into his black bag and took out a vial of holy water, and he doused the doll, making the sign of the cross over it. The disturbances stopped immediately, and the Warrens arrived safely at home. After the Warrens arrived home, Ed sat the doll in a chair next to his desk. The doll levitated a number of times in the beginning, then it seemed to fall inert. And during the ensuing weeks, however, it began showing up in various rooms of the house, just like it had in the previous apartment. When the Warrens were away, they had the doll locked up in the outer office building. Then they would return home to find it sitting comfortably upon Ed's easy chair upstairs when they opened the main front door. The doll also showed a hatred for clergymen who came to the house. In one instance, Father Jason Bradford, a Catholic exorcist, came to the house. Upon seeing the doll seated in the chair, he picked it up and said, "You are just a Raggedy Annabelle. You cannot hurt anybody," and tossed the doll back in the chair, at which point Ed exclaimed, "That's one thing you better not say." Upon leaving an hour later, Lorraine pleaded to the priest to be careful while driving home and to call her immediately when he arrived home. Lorraine discerned tragedy for this young priest, but he had to go his way. And a few hours later, Father Jason called Lorraine and explained that his brakes had failed as he entered a busy intersection. He was involved in a near-fatal accident, destroying his vehicle. This was just one of many such events that occurred over the next few years. The Warrens had a special case built for Annabelle inside the Occult Museum, where she resides to this day. Since the case was built, Annabelle no longer appeared to move, but she is thought to be responsible for the death of a young man who came to the museum on a motorcycle with his girlfriend. The young man, after hearing Ed's account of the doll, defiantly went up and began to bang on the case, insisting that if the doll can put scratches on people, then he wanted to be scratched himself. Ed said to the young man, "Son, you need to leave right now," and put him out of the building. And on the way home, the young man and his girlfriend were laughing and making fun of the doll on the motorcycle when he lost control of his motorcycle and went head-on into a tree. The young man was killed instantly, but his girlfriend survived and was hospitalized for over 1 year. When asked what happened, the young woman would explain that they were laughing about the doll when all of a sudden they lost control of the motorcycle. Ed warns you do not challenge evil, that no man is more powerful than Satan. Only God is. And with that, we conclude the story of the cursed Annabelle doll. Want more paranormal? More hauntings? More content to come? Stay tuned. Much more is coming your way. I appreciate you guys listening to this video. I hope you enjoyed the story of Annabelle, the cursed Raggedy Ann doll. And may you not let her put scratch marks on you. And even worse. Thanks again for watching. Cheers, blessings, good vibes, and ciao. Until next time.